Hi everybody, today's video is going to be on the upcoming Winter Olympic Games of 2022 in Beijing, China. So this is a bit of a continuation from a video I actually did last year about some controversies that were kind of occurring before this Winter Games was even close to being started, so it might be best to give that a quick watch to first update yourselves further on the situation and specific things I'm going to be talking about. But in today's video, I'm going to focus on and discuss the drama kind of surrounding the games with about a week to go before they actually get started. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I would like to add, before I start necessarily getting into specifics, there has already been an entire Wikipedia page created specifically on concerns and controversies surrounding these Olympic Games, which shows that even before the games has even started, there's already enough information to make an entire Wikipedia page on, which is concerning. So I'm going to first start with one of the really big things that has happened with this upcoming Winter Olympic Games, which is a diplomatic boycott of the games. So in continuation from the video I mentioned I did earlier, many Western nations were calling for some type of boycott for this Olympic Games due to the Uyghur genocide. But I do have a bit of an update on this issue. Some nations have actually decided to perform a diplomatic boycott for the games. The big ones being the US, Australia, China, and the United Kingdom. But other nations including Austria, Belgium, Estonia, Japan, Latvia, New Zealand, and Scotland are doing something similar or boycotting in some way. So the genocide on ethnic groups in China, the crackdown of human rights in Hong Kong, and the history of a lot of bad things that China has been doing and are doing are all kind of a part of this boycott. Relationships between these big four countries that I mentioned earlier and China have been politically and economically kind of going down the toilet in recent years, particularly with recent presidents and current presidents of the United States of America. And I think this is just another way for those countries to kind of twist the knife a little bit, but also an attempt to stand up for human rights. These countries are not doing this kind of boycott based solely out of the desire to protect human rights. There's also going to be other political and economical things going on behind the scenes when doing something big like this. However, some places like Russia believe that the boycott or doing any form of a boycott is a mistake. Putin has stated that the boycott is based on a drive to restrain China's development. And China, with it being one of the biggest economic economies and powers in the world, I'm sure their development is quite frankly terrible and they need help in developing in that sector. So when President Joe Biden of the United States initially announced the US's intention to diplomatically boycott the games, the Chinese Foreign Ministry responded with, these are kind of bits and pieces of quotes, but basically the Olympics are not a stage for political posturing and manipulation. The boycott is a grave travesty of the spirit of the Olympic Charter and is blatant political provocation. So essentially, a diplomatic boycott means that these nations will not be sending any government representatives to the country to preside over the games. Essentially, not sending any politicians from the countries attending shows that you don't necessarily respect the government of the hosting nation. That's kind of how I would best interpret it and put it and explain it to someone who maybe doesn't necessarily know what that means. But some nations like France and Italy have declined to join the boycott as they consider it insignificant, which it is and it isn't. The thing is, Italy and France aren't doing anything else to show that they disagree with China's policies or doing really much else to kind of help the situation. At least a diplomatic boycott is doing something, bringing awareness to it, even if it's not really still doing too much. It's still doing a little bit versus doing absolutely nothing at all. Now, kind of even going further back, the International Olympic Committee is also coming under pressure for its decision to actually allow China to host the Winter Olympics. Specifically, as an organization that prides itself and states in their charter that they are committed to the preservation of human dignity, choosing China to hold the games is kind of a blatant disregard of their own mission. For an organization that allows its athletes to basically compete without representing their nation due to war, human rights violations, amongst other things, choosing China to host the games with full knowledge of its extensive history of human rights abuses and long shady behavior is just not just a little bit hypocritical, it's very, very hypocritical of the IOC to be doing this, but then also to be complaining that countries are boycotting, or diplomatically boycotting, I should be saying, the games. However, governments have also told their athletes not to speak out against China in any form at the games due to fears of arbitrary detention. So athletes under the IOC's Rule 50 are also not allowed to make any form of political or social protest basically at any time during the games, or when they're competing, or when they're actually on a podium or whatnot. So even if an athlete does kind of break the IOC's rules and they do decide to maybe say something about human rights violations in China, it's unfortunately somewhat likely that they may just be arrested for some incredibly arbitrary reason and just held within China for whoever knows how long. Which, specifically in relation to sport, consider the recent case of tennis player Peng Shuai, who accused a Chinese government official of sexual assault and then disappeared basically from the public eye for a little while. Lots of countries have asked about her and demanded that she be allowed to make a statement. The Chinese government have allowed her to make statements and basically saying that she's okay in very kind of vague terms, and the government is saying that, you know, everyone's overreacting, she's fine, like, don't worry about her, but it's likely that she was detained and heavily interviewed and or possibly persuaded to say something else about the situation. So this particular case, and something I'm going to kind of touch on in a little bit, are also reasons why governments are kind of warning their athletes to be fairly cautious while in China, particularly about what they're saying and doing in the country. So kind of on a similar vein, the British, Dutch, and Belgian Olympic committees and governments have cautioned their athletes and staff from bringing their own personal electronic devices to China due to cyber security concerns. So these governments are actually worried that the Chinese government will take the opportunity to spy on the athletes' personal devices for government secrets and information. So China has been caught spying through electronic means from tourists and those traveling to China from work a lot before. There's a lot going on currently in the news about Chinese cybersecurity hacks. They're well known to be doing it, and what greater opportunity to spy than inviting a bunch of high profile athletes from all over the world to their country where they can manipulate and do kind of whatever they want. So the Chinese governments and embassies have, of course, denied allegations of this, calling it groundless, completely unnecessary, and unfounded. So the British, Dutch, and Belgian kind of governments have offered members going to the games clean electronics, basically burner phones that they can use while they're in China for personal and social media uses. And because in China all social media is basically state-run and monitored, like you aren't able to access your typical social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, that sort of thing. You can only access government state ones. China will actually be taking away some of those rules for the athletes coming to visit and allow them to access their Facebook and Twitter to kind of update people back home. Now, for this specific kind of no cell phone rule, I wouldn't be surprised if other nations are also going to be doing this, particularly the Big Four that have stated that they are planning on diplomatically boycotting the games. Athletes from those countries are probably going to be bigger targets for something like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if other nations do this or have done it already, just haven't made exactly public statements about it at this time. Now, of course, the big question, the big thing that's happening with this games is unfortunately still COVID-19. So when it comes to COVID, everyone, we all hoped it would be over by this point, but it just looks like it's here to stay and is causing a ruckus for the sporting world and community. So coming up to the games, there are actual Chinese cities that are on complete lockdown, as in you're not allowed to leave the city, as in government officials are going door to door and testing people to try and reduce the spread of the virus before the Olympic Games. And this is also because especially there are so many people traveling internationally that will be arriving in the country soon. The government's really trying to crack down on the spread of the particular Omicron variant in their country. There's also some professional sports organizations which have gone as far as to not allow their athletes to compete at the Olympic Games. The National Hockey League Association will not be allowing their athletes to actually go and compete for the ice hockey competitions for the Olympic Games, which is going to be a really big effect on the ice hockey teams, as many of the best players in the world are playing in the NHL and all of a sudden they aren't going to be able to. So that's really going to affect the rosters, and I feel also affect the actual competition too. Because a lot of your really, really good Canadian and American and Russian players, who tend to be kind of the best teams when it comes to ice hockey, they're gonna all be playing professional. So we're hopefully gonna see maybe a mix up in some of the top teams, some kind of underdogs from different countries come in and hopefully do really well at this Olympics. There's also going to be no fans at the games, which will look similar to the summer competition, just as case numbers are just going to be too high to control, and it'll just be a mess if they let that happen. China, also like a lot of other countries, has been running into issues keeping up with the mass amounts of testing that they're having to do, and this is a concern for a lot of countries actually heading into this game, so we'll see how that goes. At this point, kind of gearing up for another bit of a mess of an Olympic Games, considering everything. Now, of course, I'm still going to watch them because this is something I enjoy doing, but I'm ready for there to be a fair bit of drama, lots of COVID, lots of interesting stuff going on, and for definitely it to still be very different than what we're used to from the Olympics. So that was a rundown of what is happening at the upcoming Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games, which I guess officially open in about a week or so. So I'm always excited to watch the Olympics. I'm always really interested to see what's going to happen and see how everything kind of plays out. So I look forward to watching them, and also look forward to me bringing hopefully some more content on these specific Olympics as they're happening. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy watching the upcoming Olympics. Bye now.